Hello everyone, welcome back to another video here on Play on GAA with me, Seamus Brady. I have Sarah O'Donovan here with me, and in this video we're going to be doing a roundup of the last day of action in the Leinster Hurling Championship 2022, which happened over the weekend. 3 matches which all had serious consequences for all the teams involved. Wexford, first of all, saved their bacon by beating Kilkenny in Nowlan Park, 122-118. Real leaders stood up for Wexford. Dublin are knocked out of the Leinster Championship and indeed the All-Ireland Championship, going down 27 points to 21 points in Pearse Stadium in Galway. And Westmeath pulling off a huge victory over Laois in O'Moore Park in Portlaoise, winning by 524-118 against Laois, condemning Laois to the Joe McDonagh Cup, and Westmeath stay in the All-Ireland Championship for another year. Sarah, we'll start with the Wexford-Kilkenny game. Obviously, a massive result for Wexford. I mean, their leaders stood up. I mean, the one play which really sums it up for me is that mad scene around the square in the Wexford penalty area. I think it was Damien Reck blocked the ball from about 3 different Kilkenny players, TJ Reid included. That just showed, in my opinion, the drive, the determination that Wexford had. They really were not going to lose this game. And
yeah, look, I think from Wexford's point of view, there was a real sense coming into kind of the second half and watching the game that they were very much in it, and Kilkenny were starting to power down. And I was going, God, surely Kilkenny have more in the tank than this. They've been so good against Dublin previously. Galway and Kilkenny was such a riot of a game. And I was saying, no, look, this is just Wexford's purple patch. Kilkenny now are going to start like Limerick, perhaps, show them a bit of light, and now they're going to put them away. And didn't happen. Critically, though, the key for me was Wexford's half forwards and full forward line winning ball first time. So, you rarely win your own ball off a Kilkenny halfback or a Kilkenny fullback, but Rory O'Connor, Conor MacDonald, they were actually winning ball, turning their man, able to kind of push them aside. And that was what the difference was. In previous games, I don't think Wexford were winning their own ball cleanly, and definitely a shift in mindset. And this is what they were doing in that game.
Yeah, and at the back as well. I mean, Damien Reck, what a job he did around Cody. And then Damon O'Keefe as well, playing as the extra man back there. He just hoovered up everything. Liam Ryan as well under the high ball. Like, he's one of the most underrated fullbacks in the country. I think he's been consistently excellent for Wexford, really, ever since he came into the team. And look, at the back, they were so solid. I mean, keeping a Kilkenny forward line to just 1 goal, I mean, that's pretty impressive. A Kilkenny side that have been banging them in throughout the entire Leinster Championship. Like, what they ran up, I think 5 goals in 15 minutes or something against Westmeath, who Wexford drew with. So they turned a corner for this game. And then at the other end, the leaders like Lee Chin's performance, Rory O'Connor, Conor MacDonald, they're all excellent. And yeah, that really saw them. Lee Chin got 1 point in the second half where he just burrowed through about 6 lads and put it over the bar. And that just showed, in my opinion, the absolute determination they had. They weren't losing this game.
I agree. I maybe that game should be taken on its own merits as well. This Wexford and Kilkenny over the last number of years, this group of players really seems to know the Kilkenny players inside out and doesn't fear them. But then on another day, they take other teams for granted. So I was in Croke Park for the Walsh Cup final, and I saw Dublin decimate Wexford. They just weren't at the races that day at all. And it seemed like Wexford had gone completely off the map, So what would frustrate me about Wexford is that they're so inconsistent, and they can apply themselves to beat Kilkenny, but they can't apply themselves to beat Dublin in a Walsh Cup or even be competitive, or they can't apply themselves to beat Westmeath. And if they had beaten Westmeath, they would have never found themselves in the position that they had the last day, where they had to go and beat Kilkenny the way they did.
That's very true. They got a result against Galway and they beat Kilkenny. They got a draw against Galway and beat Kilkenny, and lost to Dublin and lost to Westmeath. Like, that really just does kind of sum them up. And you think as well at the league semi-final against Waterford, where they just didn't turn up after having such a solid group stage campaign where I think they won all their games. They beat Cork in the last one, and then they just didn't turn up against Waterford. So they're a confusing one. They're a weird one. They definitely have some serious talent, and Rory O'Connor seems to have really turned a corner this year and become one of the most dangerous inside forwards in the country. But yeah, moving on then from that game, Wexford obviously saving themselves, move on to the next round of the All-Ireland Championship. They will not play in the Leinster final. That will be Kilkenny, who, of course, Wexford beat. Kilkenny will go up against Galway, who beat Dublin at Pearse Stadium, 27 points to 21. Dublin falls short out of the championship again. Galway move on to a Leinster final against Kilkenny, a rematch of the handshake boys between Cody and Shefflin. But first we'll talk about Dublin. We seem way too reliant on Donald Burke in this game. I mean, 14 points from him, 9 of them from frees. He was excellent, but like Dublin, in my opinion, nothing really else up front. And I say it time and time again, Sean Curry was fantastic in the Dublin club final. He doesn't even get a look in. He's not on the panel. Like, the selection in the forwards doesn't really seem to make sense to me personally.
Yeah, and I actually had seen Sean play for DCU, if I'm correct, in the Fitzgibbon this year, and really added an injection of pace when he was playing for them. You can correct me if I'm wrong here now, but definitely plays for DCU.
Yeah.
And I would say that he's the type of player that Dublin absolutely need, because they are a bit they don't have that pace that other intercounty teams have, the Dara Fitzgibbon pace, the Shane Kingston kind of pace, and Sean Curry definitely offered that. So I'm surprised that he hasn't made any inroads with Matty Kenny's team. But outside of that, I think the team's a little jaded. I wonder, Danny Sutcliffe promised so much this year, but in the clutch games, were Dublin looking for him? Was he an integral part of their plan? Were they looking to get him on ball? And, the likes of Chris Crummy, these players have so much experience now. They shouldn't be so passive when they're playing teams like Kilkenny.
Yeah, and the thing that annoys me, I think, you think of Johnny McCaffrey's comments, of course, talking about this Dublin team compared to the team that he played on. The point that you were saying about how he said about Parnell Park maybe not being their favourite ground technically to play on. If you look at Pearse Stadium, that's actually quite a similar, narrow, tight pitch over there in Galway. Do you think that really just doesn't suit Dublin? Do you think they really need the pitch to be wide open? Because Dublin's best performance against Kilkenny over the last few years, in my opinion, was the 2020 match where we came from a huge gap behind and ended up only losing by a point. It was Hugh Lawler who hit a boomer to send Kilkenny through. That was our best performance against Kilkenny in the last few years. The other times we played them at Parnell Park, we've been bullied off the pitch. Do you think that just is it with Dublin? We need space. We need it to not be a real dogfight, which with Galway, you look at the size of their players, the Joseph Coonies, the Conor Coonies, we're not really going to win that. So do you think we need the pitch to be really big?
I think we do. And actually, the team was training in Abbottstown last week. And that's, a completely different pitch to Pearse Stadium. So those are the kind of things that you wonder, do they go against a team? Because, as you said, Pearse Stadium is quite similar to Parnell Park. Parnell Park wasn't available because it was being reseeded or resanded or something to that effect. So does the team going out to Abbottstown and having that space, the luxury of that space, kind of almost it to their detriment because they don't have that close quarters? And then you've got somebody like Garrow McInerney coming up against you at centre back, and he's so physical and so strong. And you can't get away from him. So I certainly think Dublin haven't necessarily used the right tactics in terms of preparing themselves for those games. And the result is that they've lost badly now in two competitive games that we would have said they would have been much closer to Galway and Kilkenny.
Yeah, but the Kilkenny one was depressing. I mean, like that scoreline was shocking. I mean, to concede 325 at home, like on a pitch that is supposed to be narrow and tight and make it a dogfight, like 325 is a scoreline you'd expect from Thurles. So, like that was poor. On the flip side, then of course Galway going into a final, and Kilkenny, of course, now their opponents. We talked about Kilkenny and the Wexford game there with it. Going into this Leinster final, of course, what's your first thoughts on it? Obviously, the victory for Galway, of course, against Kilkenny, the significance of the budding rivalry, if you like, between Cody and Shefflin. Then you've got, the late injuries to Pádraig Mannion and to Daithí Burke. Like, there's a lot of factors going into this Leinster final. And which camp would you kind of be backing right now? Right now, as it is, I mean, a lot can happen between here and then. But God, it's going to be tight again between these two.
Look, I don't think Brian Cody will have appreciated the way Wexford dismantled them on Sunday. Nobody likes to be shown to be weak, whereas Galway have kind of kept up their end of the bargain under Shefflin, and despite things going against them, have managed to grind out a result against Dublin. So I would say, from a confidence point of view, Kilkenny will have to ask themselves far more questions before the Leinster final, and going into a Leinster final nervy, not a good place to be. And certainly if you're looking out at the sideline at Brian Cody, that'll make you even more nervous. So I think I'd rather be in Galway's dressing room than in Kilkenny's dressing room for the next couple of weeks, because Cody's going to apply so much pressure. He's not going to want to lose to Shefflin, and it just seems like there's an awful amount of baggage that team will be carrying before they ever, get the first ball thrown in. Oh
yeah, 100%. I wonder, will that handshake, we'll learn a lot about Shefflin as a manager here, because I made a video where I've full on said that I think that was purely intentional by Cody. My personal opinion, I think that was purely intentional by Cody, because I compared Brian Cody to Alex Ferguson, and I compared Henry Shefflin almost to a Roy Keane. That, like, look, when we're together, we're winning everything, but don't for a second forget who's top dog here. I win. You know this. You went to war with me how many times, and we always won. So I feel like that handshake with Cody, given the significance of their relationship, I feel like that handshake by Cody was like, we're not on the same side now. And how bad it is for a team to be against me, and now you're against me. And I wonder, will Shefflin will that have just planted a seed in his head, like almost like a Jose Mourinho, Pep Guardiola type thing, that Jose just made Pep think about him over and over and over and over and over again. And that little handshake by Cody, because you could see in Shefflin's eyes that he looked like disappointed, or just that he wasn't happy that Cody had done that. Not angry, but like he almost looked hurt by it.
Yeah, I think, though, that if Shefflin was hurt by it, that's going to be something that he's going to use to fuel his drive for winning this game. Shefflin's a winner out and out. And look, Shefflin was asked to come back into the Kilkenny setup and didn't want to go into the Kilkenny setup under Cody. And you couldn't blame him, because, he'd taken Ballyhale to the All-Ireland and had basically got his experience of management in one of the toughest competitions there is to win, the All-Ireland Hurling Club Championship. So I think he felt that his time was now, and he wanted to take on the Kilkenny job, and he wasn't being offered it. So a brave man to step over, to go to Galway, to take them on. And now he's got, further fuel, because Cody has basically said, let's go. Boxing gloves are on, let's go toe to toe. So I think it'll be a real challenge for him. And one that he will relish.
Yeah.
More so than Cody, I think. Yeah.
The other thing is, with Cody, is that, I was saying that it's always clear that he created a siege mentality in the Kilkenny camp, that it was us against the world. And I feel like there's two factors here that separate Shefflin. Is that, number one, is that Kilkenny versus the world thing that they had created. And now Shefflin, not only has he gone to another county, because when Eddie Brennan and Mick Fennelly went to Laois and Offaly, they're not a direct challenger to Kilkenny, but Galway are, and Galway beat them. And I feel like Shefflin is saying, look, you're supposed to bleed, black and amber, and you're against us now. You're trying to take an All-Ireland potentially away from Kilkenny, potentially take a Leinster Championship away from Kilkenny. And on the other hand, I'd say he's a bit pissed off that, Mick Fennelly, Eddie Brennan, Henry Shefflin, they're all lining up that the second Brian Cody steps down, because I don't think he'll be pushed. I think he'll walk when he wants to. The second he steps down, there's three lads there who clearly would have their eye on that job. And I feel like he's like, no, I'm still the man here. Almost like, you remember Mourinho's meltdown where he was like, 3 Premier Leagues and I've won more on my own than all the 19 managers put together, or something. Like, I'm still the man. And I feel like I'd actually back Kilkenny for this one, because I just think this is the time when Cody just says, nah, I'm still the king and I'm going to prove it. But it could be a rivalry for the ages, this one.
This could be, but I think that Galway are in the best possible position because they haven't shown weakness in the last couple of weeks where Kilkenny have. Kilkenny looked threadbare in the last, they were clutching at straws against Wexford in the last kind of 5-10 minutes. And, that's very un-Kilkenny like. They weren't structured, they weren't organised. Whereas Galway have kept their structure.
Yeah. But either way, I can't wait for it. And then the last game we mentioned about Westmeath's unbelievable victory against Laois. I mean, I thought the draw would have been almost a moral victory. I still thought Laois were going to beat Westmeath. I still thought, look, they've more championship experience. They've the likes of Paddy Purcell, Chad Dwyer, Stephen Pickymar. I'm thinking, look, they're going to pull it out when they need to, because they've done that consistently over the last few years against Antrim and the like. So I was thinking they're going to do it again. But they got blitzed. I mean, to concede 5 goals at home in O'Moore Park, when clearly it's such an important game for Laois Hurling to stay in the championship. Like, how has it gone from beating Dublin in 2019 and giving Tipperary a solid game? I know obviously Eddie Brennan leaving is a huge part of that. Cheddar Plunkett's a good manager, don't get me wrong, but Eddie Brennan seemed to be at the heart of a bit of a revolution there in Laois. But I didn't see it falling this quick.
I think that Westmeath team, though, is very well organised this year. And the result against Wexford, the draw, probably came at the worst possible time for Laois, because any confidence or doubt that Westmeath might have had to get that result against Wexford, that's worth 3 or 4 scores to a team. But that game was quite close at halftime. I think it was like 12 points to 11. So Westmeath came out in the second half and absolutely demolished them. Mm-hmm. But, there's a couple of Dublin heads in there. What would you call it? Engineering Westmeath's confidence this year. And you had Westmeath obviously doing really well in the league as well. So they've just been on such a good run. And I think that momentum just carried them through that second half, and really, really positive result for Westmeath, and deserved,
Yeah, I agree. And where did Laois go from here now? Of course, not in the All-Ireland Championship, down to the Joe McDonagh. And, you've got Offaly Hurling on the rise there, like another year with Mick Fennelly. It'd be interesting to see where they're at. Like, do you think Laois are in the driving seat to bounce right back, or do you think they could be potentially caught down there as well?
Could be caught. Like, if you look at it, Kildare went up into Joe McDonagh, and I saw them play on Saturday against Mayo, and they were head and shoulders above Mayo in terms of what they had to offer, and a young team as well. So that Joe McDonagh is not now the place where you can just bounce back, because the teams that are in there and are surviving in there are very well organised. I do think Offaly will probably be the team that will look to kind of get out of there as quickly as they can. So Laois will be up against it against Offaly as well.
Yeah, I agree. But I still would probably tip them to get out. Like, I'm looking at the Dublin game, like they were one puck of the ball away from taking all the points there against Dublin, and that could have set them on a different route. But I can't wipe out the results that they.
Yeah, but you're asking for the same group of players. Yeah, you're asking for the same group of players to keep going through the motions. Like obviously Laois had a minor team who got to an All-Ireland final this year, but they were beaten by Offaly. That group of players is going to take 2 or 3 years to come through. You're asking that bunch of Laois players to stick around for another year to do the same thing again. And that's where the wheels come off the track, whereas the Westmeath team has a bit of energy about them, and they've got new players coming in. They're not as tired. So yeah, I think that particular group of Laois players has given massive service. And that's why they mightn't necessarily bounce back as quickly as they could or would have previously.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think once the ship completely turns around, I think it's so hard to turn it back. I mean, just look at Down in the football, look at Cork in the football. Like once a team fully, it's so hard to turn it around in a couple of years. And with Eddie Brennan, they had such momentum there and they lost it, and they've really, really struggled to get that back ever since. I mean, they haven't come close really to a championship victory since, apart from the ones against Antrim, because they were on the brink of almost breaking that glass ceiling into the top four in Leinster, and they've just, now Westmeath are closer to doing it than Laois. So yeah, but either way, look, mouth-watering games coming up in the Leinster Championship. That final between Galway and Kilkenny is on my bucket list to watch. I can't wait to see, what the rivalry will be like there. And then Wexford, of course, in the All-Ireland Championship, going to play the Joe McDonagh finalists. So yeah, that's the Leinster roundup. Thanks a million, Sarah, for coming on.
Great stuff. Thanks a million.
All right, guys, that's this episode here on Play on GAA. I hope you enjoyed. Please like, subscribe, share, and comment. It really helps us out. And until the next one, take care.